All right, today we have David Bailey of Why Bitcoin Magazine. Thanks for joining us, David. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, talk to us a little bit about why Bitcoin and why it is that you chose to get it all started.
Yeah, so I guess the best place to start is that now officially we're BTC Media. So Why Bitcoin is one media product that we have under the BTC Media family of media assets. So the genesis of Why Bitcoin came from going to the first Bitcoin conference in 2013 in San Jose, and realizing not just through that trip, but just at being a Bitcoiner at that time, that anytime you mentioned you were involved in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, you were asked immediately the same questions over and over again. Oh, what's Bitcoin? And as soon as you answer that, there's a subsequent answer of, oh, why does that have any value? Or how can that not be hacked? Or is it secure? Or how do you even buy it? Or can you sell it? So basically very standard questions that logically kind of follow if you're learning about something for the first time. And every single person you told you were involved in Bitcoin asked these same questions. So out of frustration, we printed a magazine that basically summarized the answer to those and concisely and credibly and professionally answered it. So that way, if someone asks you this question, instead of having to engage them in like an hour-long conversation, you can give them like a short 2-minute pitch, hand them a magazine, and say, oh, you can read all about it in this, in Why Bitcoin. So that was kind of the genesis of putting that together. And initially, we weren't sure if it was going to be sustainable or if there was going to be demand for it. And things really took off after the first issue came out. So we're now on issue number 5. We reached a little over 1 million unique readers last year, or maybe a little bit less than close to 1 million unique readers last year. And we have grown the magazine from the first issue was 52 pages to the last full edition was, I believe, 100 and it was 100 pages. So it's grown pretty substantially. We now have about 100 different companies that advertise with us, which is how we support the printing of the publication. It's a completely free magazine. And we have about another 200 to 300 companies that either subscribe to the magazine so they can hand it away to customers, or provide us content to include in the magazine, or we have some sort of business relationship with.
Very cool. I'm a fan of it, and I'm a fan of everything you're doing. I really do dig it. The question I have is, what exactly is your goal as far as like your main messaging, and not just that, but your longer-term goal? Maybe for 2016. What are you seeing in the future, the distant future, not just even the near future?
Yeah. So our number one goal is to spread awareness and education about Bitcoin, and we want to spreading awareness and adoption means branding Bitcoin in a really positive way. So our goal has been to reach, to try to reach the audiences that and reader that is not going to be the first person necessarily to know about Bitcoin traditionally or the most cutting edge technology, but is the type of person you need their support for it to really catch on as a mainstream technology. So Why Bitcoin targets C-suite executives, high net worth individuals. Our readership skews a little bit older than your general crowd of Bitcoiners, and we are really trying to provide content to people who are in their 40s or in their early 50s who are trying to get a grasp and understanding of why Bitcoin is important and how they can get involved in it. So our short-term goals and our long-term goals are really the same. To brand Bitcoin in a positive way and to grow Bitcoin from kind of its garage stage to the first billion users. So even today, as far as Bitcoin has come, 99.9% of people that will be using Bitcoin on a daily basis have not started using it yet. So it's so early. A good analogy I like to give is basically we see Why Bitcoin magazines as like our AOL disk, and we're making as many as we can and handing them out to people so that eventually they plug in the AOL disk and they plug into the internet. So that's our goal with Why Bitcoin. to kind of keep with that message of high quality content and promoting Bitcoin in a positive way, we actually created a new company called BTC Media, which Why Bitcoin is one subsidiary of. And BTC Media will be acquiring and launching several new brands, all that target a different niche audience and kind of gives the same Why Bitcoin style and quality of content. So our first acquisition that was just recently announced was Bitcoin Magazine, which is, as like an early Bitcoiner, that was a magazine I really had a lot of love and respect for. And I remember the first time I saw Bitcoin Magazine, I couldn't believe that Bitcoin was credible enough to have its own publication. So, we've taken over Bitcoin Magazine. We kind of have it on, I'm not going to say life support at the moment, but we're basically publishing one article a day on the website. And behind the scenes, we're working really diligently to have a new Bitcoin Magazine website relaunched with a whole new staff of writers and editors. And we're really trying to produce a Bitcoin Magazine that is the #1 source of high-quality information in the space, specifically targeting on news. Because with Why Bitcoin, we had people all the time sending us time-sensitive information to publish, and it makes no sense to put time-sensitive content in a print magazine that's going to be in circulation for 5 years. So it just was a natural progression for us to get an online news desk like Bitcoin Magazine, where we can publish this content and have breaking information, and we're keeping it pretty close to our chest, the feature set that we're going to be rolling out. But the website is built completely from scratch. It's built on our own technology. It's highly customizable, and we have some really cool things in the works and plan that I think will make BitcoinMagazine.com the most engaging Bitcoin site out there. I guess one feature I'll leak out real quick that I am really excited about is I'm a huge fan of The Guardian. Whenever there's a breaking news story somewhere happening in the world, where they do a live blog of what's happening, and that's something that we're going to be excited to roll out as well. As if the price is cratering and you really don't know what's going on, you can come to BitcoinMagazine.com and see a live blog with our professional and kind of expert contributors weighing in real time in the live blog, and kind of have someone to hold your hand through the experience.
David, with all these new subsidiaries coming on, can you tell us a little bit about your strategy for bringing on great writers and great content, and your strategy for producing that and meeting all the different needs of the different markets for Bitcoin, basically? So you have obviously Why Bitcoin, sort of the older audience, maybe Bitcoin Magazine, some of the younger, hipper tech audience. How do you go about finding your authors and finding your content for the most engaging effect?
Yeah, so that's a good question. One of the things we do is we just reach out to Bitcoin experts in the community that we know are going to be a hit. I mean, if you've been in Bitcoin a while, you kind of know the hip names in the space. So for Why Bitcoin, for example, our writers include Eric Voorhees, Andres Antonopoulos, Tony Gallippi. We have a ton of them. With Bitcoin Magazine, over the past couple of days, we've had stuff come out from Dave Perry, who's Coding My Sleep, which is I'm pretty sure Dave Perry was the first person in the world to get an ASIC miner as a consumer. And so he was real famous for plugging his butterfly jalapeno back in the day and making like a 100% return in 6 days, I think is how long it took. And so we basically target people who are well known in the space, who are popular. We're also targeting mainstream writers who write for TechCrunch or Fortune or Time, that already have a following outside of Bitcoin that can bring some credibility to the table and kind of draw a new audience. And then in terms of it's a little bit more challenging to find writers who can write technically and write about the more complex parts of Bitcoin and be correct, because honestly, some of that goes over my head, and outside of what I know. So we have a bit of a challenge vetting and ensuring that our more technical pieces are completely accurate, and it's very important to our brand to be seen as credible. So we're doing the best we can to make sure that we don't put anything out there that's, not credible.
So,
Okay.
as a follow-up to that, and as far as like credibility and article sourcing, I know that's an issue other outlets have had. What kind of process do you plan on having for vetting new writers, people that maybe aren't as well known if you're trying to hire someone, but maybe come from a background where they really have the knowledge, but maybe they don't have the experience or the credits yet? What exactly would be your process to go through and ask them, why are you doing this? What do you want? What do you want to get out of this? How do you know that they're going to be credible?
Yeah, so basically that. I mean, we would set up an interview. They would have to have some portfolio of work to show us. We'd get our editor to sit down with them and vet them from just a writing perspective. And then, if it's something, if the content was something that was a little bit over my head, I would track down someone who knows what they're talking about and have them vet it. But honestly, we keep a pretty tight rein, and we try to err to the side of caution. So if someone doesn't really have a track record who's trying to break into the scene, starting with us may not be the best place to start building that career immediately.
So talk to us about some of the more exciting things that you think have happened in the past couple months. Obviously, we've had a number of news stories. Take your pick. What would be your top 1 or 2 news things that you've covered?
All right. Well, we've only had Bitcoin Magazine for about 5 days, so things that we've covered maybe is not the best answer. If I had to give two announcements or 2 things that have happened in the past several months that I think are the most exciting, one would be BitPay signing Microsoft to accept Bitcoin. Definitely. When I first got into Bitcoin, that happening was considered total lunacy. That would never ever happen. And you were just instantly not credible if you tried to say that Microsoft was going to one day accept Bitcoin. The applications that Microsoft how they could use Bitcoin are probably what's most interesting, because I think they're going to set the example of how a large corporation can use digital currency to grow their business overseas. And I really look forward to seeing Microsoft allowing people to load up and fund their Xbox Live account straight from South Sudan or something like that. So it's really going to just enable whole new markets for tech companies that really aren't limited to where they can operate beyond where customers can pay for their service. So I think that's huge. I was at CES just a month ago, and the credibility of Bitcoin amongst tech companies to start accepting it was just at a whole nother level. People follow the leaders, and as soon as Microsoft made this announcement, every other tech company in the space said to themselves, we have to take Bitcoin seriously. You may not end up accepting it, and you may not like it, but you have to at least take it seriously, because the top 3 biggest name in tech just did. The other big announcement, which I don't know if you guys will appreciate this one as much, is Coinbase going really a series of announcements from Coinbase. One, that you're allowed to hold USD in your bank account. USD in your Coinbase account. 2, that you can now use Coinbase internationally. 3, that you can your money that is stored with Coinbase is insured up to a certain dollar amount. 4, that they are now backed by the New York Stock Exchange, and 5, the exchange is that's good news, but I mean there's other high quality exchanges out there. The reason I think those announcements or those series of announcements are very, very significant is because basically, in my opinion, Coinbase has basically bootstrapped themselves to be a global bank now off of Bitcoin, and this is the first time anyone's ever done that. And they can now offer you banking services, because I can now be 100% in cash at Coinbase. I can now use Coinbase for banking services. You can now use banking services from Coinbase that other banks just can't offer you. Moving money quicker, moving money for free or next to free. And something that's particularly exciting is if you look at what countries Coinbase operates in, so countries like Greece, or Poland, or I believe Ukraine is on the list. But there's several countries that Coinbase provides their services where the economy or the financial outlook of that place is not very sure. And so now Coinbase can basically allow someone in Greece to be holding US dollars or be holding euros in their Coinbase account, completely segregated from the political risk of their country, and spend euros just like they would spend euros normally, and have it transferable to any of their friends instantly, but not have to worry about the political risk of if the banks fail, and not have to worry about the fees or charges that come with a lot of these smaller banks in what I would call second world countries. So from that perspective, I think these announcements are huge, because now all of a sudden a standard Greek person can hold euros in an account, have all the different services that a bank would provide at no cost at a fully reserved bank that's insured and backed by the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, that's the first time in history that's ever been possible, ever. And the more and more countries that Coinbase rolls out to, the more and more places that can now say, well, crap, I mean, I can just start operating in US dollars or euros using the Coinbase service and totally bypass my local financial system.
Yeah, when you start to look back and you think about what happened in Cyprus when the price got shot up to almost like $100 and came up from around $15, $20 all the way up to $100 because the Cypriot banking crisis. And you wonder, what if these types of systems were in place back then? Like, what if Coinbase had an exchange where you could hold money like that? That would be fantastic. So I guess go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was having this conversation with some of our team here the other day, but the world, like it or not, operates off US dollars right now. And if you travel overseas, US dollars are accepted most places. So, people always say, oh, well, in Greece they can buy Bitcoin and be insulated from their financial system, which is true. But then they have to, you have to convince someone about the merits of Bitcoin. You at Coinbase, now they can say, hold dollars, which you already hold and already use, or hold euros, which you already hold and already use, and Bitcoin's just a mechanism that allows us to move your money very quickly for free and keep, we can basically hold your euros or your dollars in the United States, and if you want to get paid out, we can pay you out in Bitcoin if for some reason we couldn't give you a cash deposit. So it's really kind of just the next level in terms of this is how the world already works, and this is what people already expect. You're not having to pitch them on anything new.
Yeah, so as these announcements, you kind of talked about, you hit on the things that I'm most excited about. What do you think 2015 is going to hold? I mean, we're almost a month into it, but how do you think things are going to change this year versus the past few years?
So venture capitalists are not going to get cold on Bitcoin this year. This is going to be a bigger year for Bitcoin than ever. If you look at basically the funding that these venture capital firms are receiving and where it's coming from, venture capitalists who are active in the Bitcoin space are not like the bottom rung venture capitalists. I was looking at some financial results from different VC portfolios this year, and the top two performing VC funds are the Social Capital Fund that's run by Chamath, I can't pronounce his name correctly, and he owns, I think personally, over 100,000 Bitcoins, and is insanely bullish on Bitcoin, and has been looking for deals everywhere, but I can quote him as saying that in order to receive a venture capital investment from him, you have to be able to demonstrate your company can outperform the future price of Bitcoin, and he said that's very hard to do. The second company that is really active in the Bitcoin scene right now, and the second best performing portfolio out there, is Andreessen Horowitz, and they are making investments left and right. They are even going so far to say that the main focus and priority of their fund going forward for the next couple years will be on blockchain technology. So you basically have the #1 and #2 best performing venture capital funds in the world saying that the #1 thing that they're excited about is Bitcoin. So we're not looking at like the crappy VC firms. We're looking at the best. The crappy VC firms are just going to follow along with whatever the best performing companies or the best performing funds do. So, I think that venture capitalists are really kind of circling the group to determine what companies they can participate in that really have credibility. And if you look at the credible Bitcoin companies out there and compare it to where we were just 1 year ago, we're talking about BitPay, who has customers like Microsoft. You're talking about Coinbase, that has over 2 million users worldwide and growing at a faster trajectory than AOL grew. You have BitGo using multi-sig security. You have Circle. You have Zoppo. You have Bitfury, the world's largest miner. You have BitNet. You have, there's so many of them, it's like ridiculous to compare today to a year ago and the quality of companies that are out there in the space. So I think you're going to see that continue this year. And from a venture capitalist perspective, once you understand Bitcoin, it's just too hard to say no to. I mean, you're basically making an investment that could, become the key part of the global financial system. So it's like seeding Bank of America or something like that, or maybe even more valuable than that. So I think you're going to see more venture capital deals. I think you're going to see more money come into the space. And at a certain point in time, from a venture capitalist perspective, like let's say I'm Andreessen Horowitz and I have 15 or 20 different Bitcoin funds or Bitcoin investments, and I'm trying to figure out how to make those investments blow up in value. Well, at a certain point, it's smarter for me to just buy Bitcoin and cause the price of Bitcoin to go up and drive adoption and drive interest. And then all of a sudden, all 20 of my companies that I've invested into have now just blown up in valuation overnight. So if you're really trying to leverage the price of Bitcoin as a venture capitalist, you start by making a whole bunch of investments that are, don't impact the price very much. And then you take $50 million or $100 million and go blow the price of Bitcoin up and cause another bubble. And so I think we see more investments on that front. I think we see continued user growth, which I think is really important because in the past, user growth has almost been completely dependent on the price of Bitcoin. And now because of services like Coinbase, we're going to see organic growth of Bitcoin companies beyond what's happening with the price. And I think we see more and more big name retailers and merchants accepting Bitcoin because literally, companies like BitPay make it where there's absolutely no risk. I mean, the only reason you're not doing it is because at this point is because you're ignorant of why you should be doing it.
In addition to that, it is a little bit skewed with the future in 2015. What's your opinion of all the altcoins? Do you think there's any that have any value? And I don't mean economic value, but I mean as experiments, as features that could be built into Bitcoin, anything like that. Are there any of them that impress you in any way?
There are a handful. Every time a new coin comes out that has something unique about it, I always speculate by buying a handful. So I think 99.9% of what's out there is junk. I think that some projects are extremely ambitious, and I hope they succeed, but I also think there's a lot of unknown variables for some of them. And then there are some that I just think are, I don't know if they have a future or not, but I do think they're innovative. I think proof of stake is innovative. I think, some of these script coins are going to have a very rough time this year, though. I definitely think Ethereum is innovative. I do think it's very ambitious. I think that a lot of the different projects built on top of these coins are very cool, but like for example, Augur that you're working with, Tony. It's a sick idea. It really is something that has a bright future, but it is relying on whatever the underlying technology that it's using. So probably the coin that I've gotten most excited about over the past couple days or past week or so from talking to our CTO is just really kind of thinking through the different ramifications of Namecoin and what could be done with that. So I do think there are some unique alts out there, but for the most part, I spend my time thinking and focusing on Bitcoin.
So, David, we often hear that the print industry is in decline, but BTC Media and Why Bitcoin are very clearly on the ascendancy. What I'd like to know is how you think blockchain technology and all this decentralized technology is going to impact not necessarily just the print industry, but media in general. Have you thought about this and considered how it's going to impact your work and the work of your colleagues?
Yeah, so just I guess the first thing there is that you're right. Print media is definitely on decline, and it's going to continue to be on decline. We are the media assets that we're acquiring and we'll be announcing. None of them are in print. The only reason why Bitcoin is in print is because basically the marketing strategy that we have for it is a coffee table type approach. We call it push marketing, and to do that, it has to be in print. There's just no other way to do it. So, I 100% agree that print media is on the decline for a whole host of reasons. Now, how blockchain technology can affect media? That's a good question. I don't really know. There is a lot of speculation about how tipping and micro tipping will affect media going forward, and we have played with some ideas internally about how you could do tipping a different way instead of making tipping something that is suggested. It's something that is automated from a centralized standpoint, but I don't really know. We don't really have many censorship issues in the States. I imagine that in some of these developing countries, blockchain technology, there's a lot it can do to help with censorship issues. Did I answer the question? I don't know if I did.
Yeah,
No, that's a great answer. Absolutely. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with censorship issues, you're right. It's a lot less of a big deal here, but it is something that I think a lot of folks want to be concerned with in general, just because of the nature of Bitcoin and how many things it can rattle. Even though I think in the end everyone will be really happy with the results. With that all being said, is there something that people will say to you when you tell them what you do? Or do you get a lot of responses that are like, why would you go into that? That doesn't have a future. Because that's still a mindset of a lot of people. And, how do you respond to that in general?
The first thing I say is, well, do you know much about Bitcoin and how it works? And generally speaking, and when I say generally, I would say every time someone says something like that, they have no idea how Bitcoin works. I have yet to meet a credible skeptic of Bitcoin, and I have been to over 40 Bitcoin conferences, both mainstream financial conferences and mainstream tech conferences and Bitcoin conferences, and I have yet to meet a single person who has a credible argument for why digital currency and Bitcoin is not the future. I mean, I've heard all sorts of criticisms of Bitcoin, but I have yet to hear, one reason, why those criticisms are so valid that Bitcoin has no chance of succeeding. So I mean, generally speaking, I guess to directly answer your question, I'll just start walking someone through the potential use cases of it, and once you start kind of opening someone's eyes to it, they very quickly understand the power of it.
Makes sense. I think it's the same thing on our end. I mean, and by our end, I mean through everyone in the podcast that discusses this with some other issue. And I think James had a question, so I'm going to let him go ahead.
Yeah. So speaking of all that, with education, we generally tend to dispel a lot of these objections to Bitcoin. What do you think are the greatest obstacles to educating people? What are the greatest obstacles to increasing this understanding forward? How do you think why Bitcoin's going to address that, really?
Yeah, so the biggest issue is just making people care. In the United States, a lot of people just don't care, and they don't really want to take the time to care. The way that you make Bitcoin education important for them is you make Bitcoin do something that they want to do, and then they're going to learn the basic amount in order to be able to do that thing. So the perfect example is a car. Most people don't care how an engine works, and you're never going to be able to convince them to learn the physics behind how an engine works. But if people want to get somewhere really badly, they will take the time to figure out that you need to turn the key to the car, you need to put gas in the tank, so that you can kind of accomplish what you want. So, I think that the number one kind of barrier to education is having the applications out there that that drive people to want to know more. And then the challenge is to us to have that content ready for them as they come looking for it.
So, with that said, is there anything you'd like to plug? Any projects that you're working on? Any, just anything in general that you really want to get out there to tell the audience, and a Twitter handle, things like that.
Yeah. So if you're a college student, I highly recommend you get involved in this space right now. There's a lot of companies that are hiring, and there's a lot of opportunity to find your own innovation and start your own company. And I would recommend searching out the College Cryptocurrency Network, which is just a great network of different college campuses that are just looking for people who are interested and willing to learn and open their mind. And then I would also plug Why Bitcoin and Bitcoin Magazine. If you're looking for the latest and greatest in news and information, check out Bitcoin Magazine.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. We really appreciate you coming on the show and answering these questions. It's been a blast.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope I didn't make an ass out of myself.
Never a worry, David. Never a worry. And with that, that wraps up our interview. Thanks for chatting.